station, everyone. Happy new comic book day. Right now, it is chatting with the comic community. And my guest today is somebody that has been everywhere in this community. He's been showing support and also has his own channel. But he also works with a bunch of other C List podcasters in this community as well. He was also nominated for an award, for a comic book community award. That's right, everybody. I'm talking about C List Eman. Let's bring him out.
Station.
How's it going, my man?
It's going good, TM. Thank you so much for having me on the show, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me. It's been long coming. Like we've tried to do this a few times, but we finally are here, and I finally got to sit down and have a conversation with you. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Yes, this was something that's been in the works for quite a while. We're like, let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. The stars weren't aligned, and finally here they are aligned, and now we're getting to hang out here, Travis. Thanks.
So for the viewers at home that don't know a lot about you, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Eman from the C List Villains podcast. We have our own show every Monday and Thursdays on our YouTube channel, the C List Villains podcast. We go live at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I have my own channel, C List Eman, where I go in and I do new comic book day picks, new comic book day hauls, and mail calls. I'll have some special guests. And I'm starting my new monthly, weekly, bi-weekly. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to happen, but I'm going to have my own show, the Eman Show, where I talk about pop culture, past, present, and future, have some fun with it. And with my co-host, we end up doing some voiceover work. So we're going to be reading pages from certain comics. See if we can give them a little bit more personality. I'm a big gamer. I'm a dad. I'm a comic book reader, comic book collector, transformer collector. I'm just like the jack of all nerd trades right here, but a master at none. I am, however, one of the biggest nerd dads in naming my daughter Eris from Final Fantasy VII. Just wanted to throw that out right there.
That's awesome. We'll definitely be chatting about that, but let's get right into how you got into comic reading / collecting.
Yes. So all of that right there, I give all of that credit to my cousin Alex. Growing up, I never had a brother. So it was one of those things where my cousin Alex and I we're as close to a brother as we had to each other, right? I would go there almost every other weekend growing up. He'd influenced me. He's the one that actually got me into Final Fantasy. He's the one that got me into gaming. He's the one that kind of got me into a lot of my nerdy pop culture stuff, and from there, getting into comic book reading, he started collecting comics. And I was like, even back then, like in the 90s, I was like, oh, you know what, like X-Men and Superman, like I like all those guys. I like Spider-Man, but those comics, there's so much comic lore behind it. Like, I don't think I could just jump in the middle. And one day he's like, hey, you know what, if you like Spider-Man, you might like this. And he introduced me to Spawn #1. I was like, okay, well, this is the #1. This is the beginning. So what's going on here? And he explained to me the whole Image, how Jim Lee and McFarlane and Valentino, they all ended up, developing Image. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I could probably start from the beginning from here. And honestly, in the early 90s, it was just that. It was just me collecting Image comics, Youngblood, Spawn, Deathblow, like anything like those big guys were doing. I was collecting outside of Marvel. And so I just continued on through the 90s collecting pretty much mostly Image stuff, just because it was like, all right, well, I could be here from the beginning. Then, of course, high school came about. Girls kind of had to stop that right there. I started collecting again in 2014. Didn't know exactly what to do. Jumped right back in. Picked up a couple of trade paperbacks, and just kind of decided which direction I was going to go from there. Like, what am I going to like? And I ended up sticking with indie books, and that's what I mainly collect. Most of my collection is indie. Because for me, a guy who's like, I want to be there for the beginning. I want to be there from the start of this story. I can't just jump in the middle of a Spider-Man book and just be like, I'm a Spider-Man fan all of a sudden. I just feel like there's too much history there that I just wasn't there for. At least jumping into an indie, I can start from the beginning and a lot of the times be there for the end and be satisfied knowing that I was able to start and finish this storyline. So that's kind of like how my collecting mental goes. I don't collect number ones just for spec. I collect number ones because I really want to be there from the beginning of a good story. So that's my comic book collecting story right there. That's how I do what I do.
Now, do you still have your books from like Image and that, like the early Images number ones?
Yes, I have. I only have one short box of nothing but '90s Image books in there. So I have like Prophet, I have Spawn, Wildcats, Youngblood Strike Files, Team Seven, Newman. Like there was just all these really. But back then it was all about the art for me, right? It was about the art, the coloring, and the paper, and I was just all about just that quality. I wasn't really much into the stories yet. Like I'll be honest and tell you I'm bad at reading comprehension. I'm just like, oh, pretty picture. I like this one right here. Ooh, the lines on this. Oh, okay, I like that. And that's what my brain goes to. Later on, I developed the whole, try to read better stories and try to understand them a little bit better. Because in reality, a lot of those Image stories, they weren't original. They were not. But they were familiar enough for me to be captured and gravitated into the storyline. So yeah, I have like a box of nothing but old '90s Image books in there, and we know they're not worth much, but it's
No,
cool to still hold on to.
they're getting worth much now, like Youngblood number 2, because it's the first appearance of Prophet and Shadowhawk. That went
Mm-hmm.
up in price and that. And Prophet number 1 is getting so many facsimiles. I think it probably already came out by the time this airs, but like I think they came out with like a bunch of like facsimiles, like about 6 issues of Prophet number 1, because what's his name is going to be the lead for a Prophet movie.
Who? Wait. Who? Oh, wait. That's right. Isn't Jake Gyllenhaal going to be the lead for the Prophet movie? That's right. I completely forgot about that. That they're doing a Prophet movie. Oh, that's right. Youngblood number 2 should be shooting up in price. I better go check the bins and see if I have any of those. I do know that I got tricked. Like Youngblood number 9. When I went to my comic book shop one day, the guy was like, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of these copies here in the shop, but this is such a low print run. I don't even know if people are needing it." So I totally like stacked up on a Youngblood number 9, thinking like my 15-year-old self, "Oh, I'm gonna make money off of this," and you know how it is with those Image books. So I'm really hoping and crossing my fingers that something bigger comes up, and I'm hoping the Prophet movie does good. Jake Gyllenhaal's he's a seasoned actor, and I have high hopes for that, but I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and it's kind of a character. Prophet was all right, but he never really, like, I've read Prophet, and he just, a character didn't stick with me as much as like the other characters have. Like I would like kind of Cyber Force would be a good one.
Yes, Cyberforce was really really cool. That was a that was that their version of the X-Men, or was that their version of?
It was the version of the X-Men, but like kind of mechanical in a way. So like
Yeah,
they're mutant cyborgs.
yeah. I liked Cyberforce. I was a big fan of Wetworks until they got this weird like werewolf storyline embedded into it. I was like, where the hell are we going with this? And that one was weird. I was just really proud of Wetworks because that was a Filipino artist with Will Spartacio. I'm like, oh dude, Filipino artist, representing, the Filipino community. I was so proud. But I guess there was like a really bad family tragedy that really delayed that book for Will's, and it took years before it came out. So finally, when it came out, I was like, I need to stack up on this because I want to support, my Filipino brother. So I have like quite a few like Wetworks books, but when the story went towards like the weird werewolf thing, I was like, oh man, it kind of fell off right there. So it's funny because a lot of the Image books start off like this is good and then drop off story wise. Like, okay.
That's what a lot of people said with Spawn. Like I'm only halfway through Spawn. Like I'm trying to like get through that middle piece of it. But a lot of people said like it started feeling too religious for them, and then they had to fall off. And I was like, well, it hasn't gotten to that part yet. For me, there is like angels and heaven and hell and that in there, but it hasn't gone too religious yet for me. But like I'm only on like issue 60.
I think I'm with you as far as trying to restart Spawn. So I started collecting Spawn again like at like 304, like after the big hype. I started collecting Spawn, but the funny thing is like I collected Spawn for a while, but I never read those issues. I was just like, let me just have them in my collection because I want to go back and read the first 300. I really want to get through that right there because I stopped I think like at 22. I want to get to the point where it's the John Boy Myers run. I think there's like 6 or 7 issues that John Boy drew for Spawn, like in the mid 200s, and those are the ones that I really want to see because I think he went ahead and did something with his background. It was more of like a flashback type story, and I want to read that part right there. But yeah, Spawn, I can see why people are seeing that it got a little religious because they did have like the whole heaven and hell and whatnot. And Prophet's like that too. Prophet's kind of religious-y. So I'm just hoping that it hits. I'm just hoping it sticks. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, me too, because then that just opens up the doors for potential of other Image characters from the 90s to come out. Like, I know we had our Spawn movie, and they were still in talks with the Sam and Twitch series,
Yeah.
but there hasn't been anything said about that since then. Other than that, Shadowhawk's coming back in comic form this summer.
Oh,
So
it
he,
is.
so there's a potential we could possibly see maybe a series from that, but Image doesn't have a lot of series out. Like they have like the few things like Invincible, of course, The Walking Dead, and that, but that's from Skybound. That's from Robert Kirkman. Or we want to see like more of the '90s Image come on the big screen.
I thinking about it, like what would work on the big screen. I would actually be rooting for a Youngblood series or a Wildcat series. I would like to see like a team up like that myself. Some of those characters are really cool, though I know that they're all X-Men knockoffs. I get it. If anything, what I want to see is I want to see a Death Blow series. I want to see a live Death Blow from Jim Lee's because that art that he did in Death Blow, like when he did that style, was completely different from his X-Men run, and I thought that art was freaking amazing. So I'd like to see like a Death Blow, like either movie or some kind of series coming out of that. I want to see a continuation of the 90s stuff. Like that would be cool if they could just continue on, but in a different medium, because that would mean that someone was listening and someone was paying attention and they want to relive their childhood. And I would love to see that. That'd be awesome.
Now, here's the issue with Deathblood. You said like Jim Lee. It now doesn't DC own the rights to Deathblow?
Oh, that's right, right. Ooh, no, wait. DC owns the whole Wildstorm characters. I don't know if Deathblow was part of that. I don't know. Maybe he was. Maybe he was. You know. So you're right. Maybe DC can tinker around with that. We did get Grifter in a Batman movie, so I guess or the Batman animated movie, so that might work. So okay, yeah, you're right. You're right.
That was crazy that we got a grifter in a Batman movie.
I was kind of bummed out though. I was like, this Grifter kind of he doesn't seem as cool as he did in the comics. I was like, I like the Grifter from the comics. Like Grifter, when Grifter did that series with Backlash, like there was like a 5-issue miniseries. It was Grifter and I think another character Backlash. Like those characters' designs were super cool to me, and the art style with those books were so dope. And again, like the storyline was okay. It was kind of basic, but it was just the art that got to me. And that's what I want to see. I want to see like that right there. I want to be able to see like some of the cooler, I want to see some of the cooler designed comic book characters come to life in movies, even if it's cheesy, just for funsies, you know?
Yeah, I want to go back to Cyberforce because those are like some of the best designed characters out there, and that would be so cool to like see Ripclaw, like live action, because like what they'd have to be, a lot of it would have to be CGI, but like just imagine like how it would look.
It would be super dope, especially with the technology that we have nowadays. It's very possible to make those characters look just lifelike, exactly like they do in the comics in such a fun way. Yeah, Ripclaw was dope. See, Cyberforce was cool. It wasn't one of my main reads, but Cyberforce was really cool. Look, I was a teenager. I could only get like so many books a week. I was like, I can't, if I'm going to start a series, which I'm going to choose. So I went with like Youngblood, Spawn, and Wildcats were like my main ones. And I saw Cyberforce, and though it was cool, I just couldn't get it. I was like, one of these days. However, going back to Prophet, what got me back into Prophet was when Stephen Platt did the art for Prophet. And that was such a huge thing because he had just come off that Moon Knight run. And that was like, I thought that was going to be like the next generation of just amazing, just crazy over the top art. So, so in my head, when I hear that Jake Gyllenhaal is doing Prophet in a movie, I'm like, he seems kind of small. Maybe if they CGI it, that might look a little bit different and better. But like, doing Cyberforce CGI makes more sense to me than doing a Jake Gyllenhaal Prophet movie. So, but again, let's see what happens. I'm hoping that it hits hard.
And CGI in his like it worked for Shazam because Shazam had the suit over his arms, so like to make him look bigger. But with Prophet, it's his bare arms that are showing, so it'd be kind of really hard to CGI that.
It would. It would. So he's probably got to bulk up. He's
Uh,
got to
he,
bulk.
he probably is. Hopefully, he did do a good job in Spider-Man, as short-lived as it was. But I think he can do a fantastic job on this because, like, I remember him like getting introduced to him was like Bubble Boy and then Donnie
Yeah.
Darko, which
Donnie
came
Darko.
they
Yeah.
both came out the same year, I think. So he jumped from doing Bubble Boy to Donnie Darko. So that just
Mhm.
shows the range he can go through.
Yeah. No. I think Jake Gyllenhaal is such an underrated actor. Um, a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought the Prince of Persia movie really wasn't bad. I didn't think it was that bad at all. I think a lot of people just assumed because it was a video game property that it was going to be a bad movie. It wasn't that bad. In fact, I would probably even say it was one of the better video game adaptations that have come out. Um, and I thought he did a fantastic job in Prince of Persia. So like, yeah, you're right. His range, he's got the range. I believe he's got the range. He just needs that one movie that's gonna put him over the top. And I think Prophet could be it.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that like a lot of movies like haven't made him a star yet from like a lot of the stuff that he has done that has been amazing because like uh, I remember when he was in Zodiac with Robert Downey Jr. That was fantastic as well, and he did a fantastic job in that movie.
That one was super creepy. I did watch that movie. I watched it once. And it was just really, it was really eerie. Not even really talking about Jake Gyllenhaal's character, but just the movie was really eerie because of how real it was and how it happened here in the Bay Area in the 70s. And I think right around the time that the movie came, there was this big thing about some lady coming out indicating that she may have been the daughter of the Zodiac killer because she remembers on going on some of the runs with him. So it was super eerie how that movie, and then how this one person comes out and starts saying that, and there was some kind of investigation that happened, and they think that she may be telling the truth, and it came out around the same around the same time as the Jake Gyllenhaal movie. So that premise of the Zodiac killer was super super eerie, and he did a great job of being a detective in the movie. It was really eerie. He does that type of role pretty well, I think.
Yeah, he does. But then he can also play like the goofy type of character. Like I want to go back to Bubble Boy, but I haven't has he really been in like that kind of bubbly type of movie since Bubble Boy?
See, I'm trying to look up his IMDb right now to see if there was anything else that he's done that's been kind of bubbly, kind of like, almost comedic. And his last few movies have all been, I don't know, they've been coming up and down, I guess, right? Like just different type
Kind
of
of
roles.
mature roles in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
way.
yeah. Exactly. A lot of I'm looking there's a lot of those like indie type movies, like the oh, he did Southpaw too. That's right. He was that fighter. What else? What else is us? He was great in End of Watch. Have you seen that movie about the
I have
cops?
I have not seen that movie yet.
Oh, dude, that one was really good. That one, he was a cop and he had a partner, and it's hard to explain. I'm not good at explaining things. It was just a good cop movie. That's all I can tell you. He did a great job in that movie. That's what I could remember.
All right. Well, moving on. Let's move on to, you mentioned Final Fantasy, and I already know it's Final Fantasy VII. It's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games too. It's what got me into the franchise in the early days of PlayStation. Not this
Mhm.
PlayStation 5 crap, just a regular PlayStation. Now, how, kind of getting really personal here, but how old were you when you first discovered Final Fantasy VII?
Final Fantasy VII came out what in 1994. I was already a teenager by then. TM. Um, I was what 13, 14 around the time. Let me see. I wanna just make sure. 1997 is when it came out. No, I lied. I was 20 when Final Fantasy VII came out. So it sucks. So there's a story behind that right there for me too. So when it was announced that Final Fantasy VII was coming out, it was originally supposed to come out on the Nintendo 64, right? And there was this huge thing about this partnership between Sony and Nintendo and whatnot. And it was one of those things where the consoles were coming out at that time, and it was either switch to PlayStation, an unknown system, or stick with Nintendo. You've had all of the iterations prior to. I had the Nintendo, the NES, the Super NES, the Game Boy. I'm like, I'm gonna stick with Nintendo 64. Dude, Final Fantasy VII is gonna be released on here. So I bought the Nintendo 64, and then I bought the Nintendo 64 that winter for Christmas, so 95, 96, I think. And then that following spring at I think E3 or CES, like one of the gaming shows, it was announced that Sony went ahead and took like a 180 and was like, no, we're going to be releasing Final Fantasy on our system. It's not going to be on Nintendo. And everyone, like, I know I was one of those guys. I was like, what the hell? So I was actually really bitter. I was really, really bitter that Final Fantasy VII was not coming to Nintendo 64. So I kind of gave up a little bit. I was like, man, forget this. Bye. I was kind of mad. A few years later, my aunt was like, hey, I came up on the PlayStation. Like, do you want it? I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And it was a modified PlayStation at that time too. Someone went ahead and put in a chip. But I was like, no, I'm not interested in that just yet. I was like, you know what? The first game I want to play, let me put in that Final Fantasy VII, and popped it in. My cousin had it. I was like, yeah, this is like the updated version of what I used to play. Because growing up, I was playing like my favorite games like Zelda and the previous Final Fantasies, like one, two. At that time, it was 1, 2, and 3, right? Which in Japan was like number 1, number 4, number 6, something weird like that. And I was just used to the sprites. I was used to the turn-based sprite type fighting, and there was a lot of, strategy that went into it. And then when it went into Final Fantasy VII with the 3D and the polygons, it was just completely different, a completely different world. And then the story was just on point. And I was like, okay, maybe I should have bought the PlayStation instead of the Nintendo 64. And then just from there, I was just playing the game, and of course, like the big tragedy mid-game when you're like, you develop feelings for this one girl that you absolutely love, and Sephiroth does the unbelievable. And to this day, is the most tragic thing that I've ever seen in a video game was when Ares got stabbed by Sephiroth. So
I don't think there is any other game, because like any other game that you played, like there was always like nobody died, and like especially like the main characters, and then all of a sudden you just see like Aerith get stabbed, and like at that point, I know it's like pretty bad in graphics now, but like at that point, it felt real,
it
and
felt
she looked
real.
real, so like it was heartbreaking.
It sucked so bad. Like I actually stopped playing the game for a little bit after that. I was like, I don't believe that this happened. What in the world? Which is, it's I don't know why I named my daughter after the one character that dies in the game. And she knows it too. She's like, I die in the game. I was like, you don't, but the character you're named after does. And I named my daughter Eris because I played the original misspelled version of Final Fantasy VII, where, you know, before they corrected her name to Aerith, she was originally Eris. And I was like, you know what, because that was the game that I played, I'm going to stick with that. That's why I named my daughter, you know, Eris. Actually, hold on. I actually have 2 of the Final Fantasy VIIs right here. Now,
Oh my god.
but check this out. This one right here, I don't know if you're not going to be able to see it probably, but right here is the error where it was like a misprinted error. And this one is actually worth, you know, a pretty, I think, like, you know, if I can get this like cleaned up, this version right here can be sold for like $100 on eBay. This is like just like the original version, and I had like the greatest hits version for some weird reason. It just came upon me, but see, like I love Final Fantasy, and then I bought it on the PS4, so I have the remake version. Yeah, man, just the Final Fantasy VII world was the one that I absolutely fell in love with, even though it broke my heart twice by, number one, not being on the Nintendo 64, and then 2, killing Aerith. It was just like a big ball of feelings with that game, you know, and then just being able to overcome a lot of the challenges in that particular game, because it was so different from number 1 through 6 technically. So that's why I fell in love with number 7.
Yeah, and definitely the feeling of accomplishment after you beat the game, because it's a long game, like 3 discs long.
Mm-hmm.
And touch back on the whole it not going to the N64. I know Capcom and Nintendo had a deal like prior to like them going to Sony and that, because like they had Mario RPG that came out, and Capcom had like a whole deal with that. But it was the whole Nintendo didn't want to go to the discs.
Yeah.
So like for better graphics and that, so like Capcom like up and just went to Sony. And that's why whenever we got like future Mario games that were like RPGs, we got like Super Mario or Paper Mario instead. That had nothing to do with Capcom. And like they took a whole new style on the RPG, because I don't know if you remember Mario RPG. That was probably one of the best Mario games for Super Nintendo, in my opinion.
I have the Super Nintendo Mini, and the Mario RPG is on there, and I played a little bit of it a few years back now. I didn't complete that game. Though it was my style of gaming, I didn't complete it. I maybe played like 5 hours of it. It's super fun. It's really, really fun. It's one of those it's one of those games that you wouldn't expect to be good, because you're thinking like, oh, it's a completely change in genre. You know, I'm used to the side scrolling. I'm used to the platforming Mario. You know, I'm used to a certain way. Why are you changing this, Nintendo? And they did that a lot, right? They did that a lot with like Zelda. They did that with Metroid when it went to from a side scrolling platformer to a first person shooter. But they did it in such a way that it made sense, and it actually was really good. And so Paper Mario and Mario RPG were two of those games that ended up being some of the most magical games that Nintendo came out with, because of that, because they went ahead and say, look, we're going to switch genres on you, and I think you're going to like it. And yeah, sure enough, it was one of the best.
Now, to go back to Final Fantasy, years later, I did not know that it came out in '94, because when I first played it was probably about like 2001. They came out with like the bestseller, like, you know how PlayStation had like the greatest hits.
Greatest hits, yeah.
Yeah, I seen that one Christmas and had money for games and stuff, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna get this one. It says greatest hits. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna pick it up, and fell right in love with it. Like years later, I didn't have to wait that long until Advent Children came out, the movie. Now, what did you think of that?
So, a few years when Advent Children came out, my cousin had, the same cousin who got me into gaming, he had this special VCR. It was a VCR that actually had 2 heads in it. So he would actually rent a video and then record it at the same time Totally illegal. Yes, it was a long time ago, and I'm not telling you anything else other than that. But he ended up getting a copy of Final Fantasy VII. So, like the very first time I watched Advent Children, it was in all Japanese. It was all Japanese, and me and him were like, we're just trying to figure out what are they saying. Like we gotta get like the idea, you know. Oh, there's Rito. Oh, there's so and so. Oh, there's we're like piecing things together, and it was such a pretty movie to look at, especially when you saw the redesign of Cloud. When you see Aerith for the first time, you're like, oh my god, there she is. It tugged at the heartstrings like so well, and then just not even that much after that the DVD came out in English. We lost our shit. We're like, oh my god, we got to go get this. And then we watched it in English, fell in love with it. Fell absolutely in love with it. I was like, it just brought back all the good fond memories. I even showed that movie to like some of my family members who aren't into anime or video games. And like midway through, like I just start seeing people sitting down next to me, like, "What's going on? Oh wow, oh dude, that's a big sword. How does it carry that?" And it actually, I remember it actually got some of my family members to come around and just nerd out with me for an evening, and I loved that so much. Like Final Fantasy VII is just it's a world that I do cherish because I was so embedded in it at such a I don't want to say young age, but that was just the one that I really gravitated to when it came out.
I agree, and I agree that like even people that weren't into anime or into the game and stuff, they were captivated by like the movie, like just the design of the characters and that, because like it was a while ago that movie came out, and like it was kind of the I want to say the animation was a lot better than most animations that were out at that time.
Mm.
And it really popped. And I think it really changed the look of a lot of animations going forward. But yeah, it got a lot of people into it that weren't into anime, weren't into Final Fantasy VII, and just loved the story because it just pulled you in to just what they were telling you, and that you could feel for the characters. And oh man, I can watch that movie over and over and over again. Really hope that they kind of do like maybe more of those type of movies now with the remake out, and that maybe they will make more movies, maybe focused on different characters, maybe not following that same storyline, but like let's see the backstory of a certain character. Let's see the backstory to Barrett.
Mm. That I would love to see a remake of several Final Fantasy, and I'd like to see them in movie form. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children was one of the few CGI Japanese-produced animes to come out of Japan that actually was a hit, right? Like a lot of other CGI stuff at the time, people were like, they weren't feeling it. They wanted the original cartoon manga style art, right? But when that one came out, it was actually a pretty big hit, storyline, animation, everything. Then they did, was it Kingslayer, Final Fantasy 15, and that was a huge production. That was very eye candy-ish, but I didn't really understand that one. I felt like there was too much lore that wasn't explained. Maybe I had to play the game first because I skipped Final Fantasy 15. Just because by then I was like, there's just so many of them, In 16, it's like it's on its way. We're expecting a 16 soon, but I'm I the animation is what gravitates you, and I would like to see better storytelling now that we know that the technology is there to give us good looking eye candy-ish big productions. I want a story now, and that's one of the things that people gravitated to Final Fantasy the series, is not just the gameplay, but it was also there was a really good storytelling behind it, and I want that translated over into the movies. I want I want the animation to match the storytelling. Actually, I want the storytelling to match the animation. I just want it perfect.
Yeah, there was also another one. It came out before Advent Children too. It's Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Spirits Within. That was with Ming Na Wen. A lot of people don't know that she was
Oh
the voice
yeah,
for that doctor. Yeah.
I did not realize that until I was watching top worst movies that came out throughout the like years and stuff. And Final Fantasy Spirits Within was in that list, and then I heard the main actor, so I was like, oh my god, that's Mulan.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know who that is, Mulan is also Fennec Shan from the Book of Boba Fett.
That's what a lot of people are going to know her by right now, because that's her latest thing, right? She was the voice of Mulan. She was in the Joy Luck Club, which is also a big '90s, Chinese American movie that mattered. She's just all over. Agents of Shield, So she's in Marvel, she's in Star Wars, and she was in Disney. I think she's one of the few people who's actually done the Disney trifecta, right?
Now we just need her to voice something in Pixar.
Boom. That's it. Yeah, and Spirits Within. Now, I'm going to say I liked the movie. I'm going to say I liked it because it was a Final Fantasy movie. There was a lot of things that happened in that movie that made Final Fantasy sense. Now, I understand people don't like it because they probably didn't understand how some of the lore worked, how some of the spirits worked, how some of this stuff. And I get it because the movie really didn't tell you too much about it. But because it was cool eye candy at the time and it was really good animation for its time, that's why. And because there was a Final Fantasy name behind it, I liked it. Now, definitely a biased decision to like this movie, but it wasn't as, in my opinion, it wasn't as bad as a lot of people say it was. But I also understand because the storytelling did not flow. The plot wasn't there. It didn't hit hard at the end.
See, I watched it in theaters, and being ignorant and going to watch it, me thinking like Final Fantasy, the only game that I played was Final Fantasy VII, and it did have aspects of the other Final Fantasy games in it, but I didn't play them. So I was going in there, and I walked out of there being like, "Oh, it's not my Final Fantasy movie. Like, that had nothing to do with my type of movie." Like, so I was pretty upset about it at that time. But it's all right if you really look at it, and if you've actually played most of the Final Fantasy games, it does tie into a lot of them.
It takes elements from a lot of them. It does take elements from a lot of the Final Fantasy games, but it doesn't do it in such a way that it makes the regular viewer who doesn't know Final Fantasy lore, it doesn't make sense to them. And I get it. I totally get it. It was one of those movies that I think that they should have just done a little bit more research behind. Now, though, the animation I thought was great. I thought it was very fluid. I thought it looked okay. Though the faces they didn't show the emotion. But even back then, like, you couldn't really show emotion in animation in CGI just yet. That took years to perfect.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this this was like the first time that they tried to do that face recognition stuff, like where they like had like tried to get the facial onto the animation?
That I'm not sure. I don't remember the technical aspects of that movie, but if it was, man, cool. That's the beginning of it all, I guess, right? With the facial recognition, and then at least we can see where it came from, right? I'm sorry. I'm back here trying to dig for some stuff because I really want to show you things that I had like Final Fantasy 13, right?
Nice.
Final Fantasy 1 and 2.
That's going back.
Final Fantasy 8. See, I have most of the Final Fantasy. Yeah, like this is what you're talking about. Like one of the greatest hits. This is like what the greatest hits look like. So this is Final Fantasy Chronicles, where it has Final Fantasy 4 and Chrono Trigger on it. Chrono Trigger is one of the best games ever, too. Final Fantasy Anthology, which is number 5 and number 6. And then of course, like the two Final Fantasy 7s editions. I really loved playing these games, and I think I have and I'm playing. Actually, I restarted Final Fantasy X not too long ago. I just popped it in, and I just was like, let me play this game again. And that one brought back a lot of memories too.
Now, did you play the new Final Fantasy VII remake?
Yes, I did.
What did you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. It's definitely not my Final Fantasy, and that's okay. It's definitely not my Final Fantasy VII, and that's okay, because I needed them to do something different. I needed Nomura to change it up enough for the new fans to relive this Final Fantasy VII world. Now there was many changes, within the game that you're like, this, I don't remember this part. I don't remember this part. Okay, they're expanding this part. Oh, okay. I had to stop, like, I think 25 hours into the game and remember, like, look, wait, this is just part one. This is just the Midgar story. This is just the beginning. So don't get
Yeah, this
wrapped
is just
up.
like a fraction of the story.
Yes.
There's so much more.
So much more involved in the Final Fantasy VII lore that the remake, you were in Midgar the whole time. And so completely changing the story, adding it, stretching it out. I think the storytelling, they did a fantastic job. Now, some of the voice acting was really annoying. Like the guy who did Cloud, I was like, okay, your voice acting is kind of annoying. However, the girl who did Tifa, like her voice acting is phenomenal. I love it because she doesn't seem like the female character that needs help all the time. Oh my god, I need help. Dude, she was a strong woman and she portrayed herself as that, and the voice acting really matched that persona very well. She wasn't too needy and too wanty and too, oh, I need help. No, she was like, no, I need this to happen. I need that to happen. I really loved her acting. The change in style from turn-based to action RPG, that's all, Kingdom Hearts right there. So anyone who's played Kingdom Hearts and you guys were on the fence about Final Fantasy VII, play Final Fantasy VII because it is familiar to you. It is the same exact director from the Kingdom Hearts series to Final Fantasy VII. So go play it because, in my opinion, Final Fantasy VII was fantastic. And to think that there's so much more coming, I'm very much okay with that. Yes, this is Square Enix cash grabbing. Yes, this is them trying to make more money off an old property. But I think they're remaking it in such a way that anyone new or old can enjoy it just as much equally.
Now, I know that there was changes in the game, but like you remember those spirits that were coming and like kind of like stop you from doing stuff? If you
Mm,
noticed, they only came when a certain thing in the game changed from the original.
yeah,
And
that
that was a cool throw in. Like I was like I didn't realize that, and I think I was watching somebody and they said that, and I was like, oh my god,
and it
that's
changed
great.
the game. Once they came in, it changed the game completely. It was unfamiliar at that point. You're like, well, wait a minute, like this isn't part of the original, and then once you get to the end, like the ending of Final Fantasy VII, it completely changed everything. Because then you're like, wait a minute, so and so is here. Wait, so and so. Wait, that spirit's here. Maybe we're not gonna lose Aerith, or maybe we will. Like there was, slight spoiler. There was someone online who made mention that, what if the Sephiroth that we're fighting in the game isn't from that Final Fantasy VII universe and is actually from a different Final Fantasy universe who's trying to change things around. That's why you see Zack at the end. That's why you see Zack instead of Cloud at the end, as if Zack survived. And you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Like, Zack was Cloud's like best friend who was in the military, and he ended up dying. But then when you see him at the end, as if he's still living on, you're like, what's happening here? So those spirits are doing something, and I need to know a little bit more about those spirits. Like what exactly are they there to do? Like, yeah, we have a little bit of that information at the end, but there's so much more. There's so much more to happen because it doesn't feel like the end game is to fight Sephiroth. It feels like the end game now is to figure out why is everything changing. And I'm very much okay with it. Very, very, very much okay with it.
And that's what I like too, because like they're like you said, like they did change it up, but in a good way. Like they're keeping old fans like interested. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like this is changing. Like this is we're seeing this change. We're seeing that change. Now, where does the story go from here? And that's what
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy initially was. Like it was a huge story that like kept you drawn in. And like of course you get to play the game, but you actually get to sit back and watch a story unfold in front of you.
And that's the kind of games that I really enjoy playing. Are the games that actually have a very good engaging story plus good gameplay. Final Fantasy VII's, a lot of RPGs are like that. A lot of RPGs, the gameplays are good, but the story is kind of like, all right, well, this kind of sucked. So I like a really engaging story with very good gameplay. Though I talk a lot about Final Fantasy VII, my absolute favorite game of all time is actually Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, because it's a Metal Gear game. It starts you off at the beginning. It gives you the background story, great boss fights, and also another huge twist at the end with regards to storytelling and plot twisting. And I was like, this game broke my heart too, because you're like, but you're my person. Now you're not my person, but at the end you really were my person, even beyond what I thought, and it messed with my mind. So engaging storytelling in gaming matters a whole lot to me. And that's why I like story type games like Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid. Fantastic storytelling. That's what I love.
Now, being as big as a gamer as you are, what project, like, we have seen like video games become movies. Some like not that great, but like we did have Sonic that came out, which in my opinion was fantastic. What video game franchise would you like to see on the big screen?
Here's the thing, like, I as much as I'd like to see a Metal Gear Solid be on TV, I think that the storytelling needs to be done over. I don't think. Okay, thinking about it now, just I don't think I want to see any video game property be a movie, but more of like a Netflix series. You know, Netflix has been doing a good job, and Disney Plus has been doing a good job of doing these miniseries. 7, 8 episode, hour-long series, and they're good. It's the big movies are for the big booms, for the big bad guys, for the big stuff, for the big airships and stuff like that, for the big stuff. But like the smaller series, they're long enough to be able to tell you a really good story. Video games, man, like Final Fantasy games, like you can finish those at anywhere from 30 to 50 hours on average. Final Fantasy 10, it took me 80 hours to play. There's people who are constantly playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that's a huge RPG. RPGs, in my opinion, are meant to just stay in that medium because there's just so much storytelling. Now, if you get a good writer to be able to do that in 4 seasons, 10 episodes, hour-long episodes, then yeah, I'm gonna have to say Metal Gear. That's the one series I want to see. Whether you change it up a little bit. Snake was just one of my heroes growing up. He was one of the coolest heroes ever. And then on top of that, he's fighting this big, huge walking mech that can shoot nuclear missiles. That just to me is one of those things that I would love to see on my TV. I would love to see that, and told in such an engaging way that you're like, I need more of this. And that's how it happens with video games. You're like, I need more of this. I want the same people in my life to feel that way about a property that I've already played and understand, but in a property that they understand, in a medium that they understand, like a TV show. So Metal Gear, I would love to see that as a Netflix show.
Now, who would you cast as Snake?
Man. Of course, you'd want to say, what's his name, Kurt Russell, right? Because he played, Snake in Escape from New York, and that's who Solid Snake is kind of based off of. So saying Kurt Russell playing Snake would be cool, but you need someone middle. You know who I think could play Snake? Probably like a John Hamm. Like, I need that guy in more things. I kind of feel bad for him, and he's such a good actor. He's got the big physique. Either like a John Hamm could play Snake. Who else? That's the only person that I can really go to right now is just John Hamm.
I haven't really played a lot of Metal Gear Solid, but I keep forgetting his name. But he played in Heroes. He was like the main guy who can like take people's power. Well, yeah, if he was like near them, he can have their powers.
Zachary Quinto. He was the one who played Spock too in the Star Trek movies, right?
The guy who, like, if he was around the person, he can use.
Let me see.
He was like the main guy. He was like the nurse guy, and that he's been in a few things since. Like he's been in like a few Adam Sandler movies. He was in he played in Gotham the first season or second season, I think. He played a villain type character, but he would. I don't know. Like I feel like he would make a good Snake. Like he could buff up in that.
Um, are you talking about what's his name? Milo Ventimiglia?
Yeah,
Him? You know what? Yeah, he's got a younger look. He could probably pull off that because I'm looking at the Heroes site right now on NBC, and yeah, like I can see. See, here's the thing. Like we brought up Jake Gyllenhaal. Like him and Jake Gyllenhaal kind of have the same type of look, and no, but I need someone that feels a little bit more military than that. I need someone who's got a bigger persona, and I
because
don't
like
know, man.
he
Maybe
did play that
Jonathan Isaac.
military type role in. He was like wearing a uniform in that in That's My Boy with Andy Sandberg and Adam Sandler. And he was the guy that was like having sex with his sister. Like Andy Sandberg was the guy marrying his sister, but they were like having sex. He's like, "What? Two good-looking people are having sex? That's normal." Like you hit your brother and sister.
Oh no! Oh yeah, yeah, Chad from that. Yeah, Bilo. Okay, I know what you're saying. She does. He does look like someone that could probably play Snake. I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fan casting who could play Snake, um, but solid snake fan cast, solid Snake. Um, but I can only think of just that one right there. Just going with John Hamm as Solid Snake. Uh, there's a lot of people that are going through like recommending like other actors. Let me see. Let me see if I can find one. Let me see if I can find one. Yeah, no. Look, a lot of the fan cast are saying Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell should just stick with playing Solid Snake, just because he's the one that he was based off of.
All right then. So moving on from like video games and comic books, I want to hear some of the TV shows that you're watching that aren't comic book related.
Oh man. So I like to watch a lot of travel stuff. I like to like watch a lot of travel and food stuff on the side. You know, not comic book related. We're talking like Taco Chronicles on Netflix. You know, I like watching stuff like that. Chef's Table on Netflix. I'll watch a lot of YouTubers. I really enjoy watching Mark Wiens on YouTube. He's a food blogger or vlogger too. Like his I like it because he'll go to all these exotic places and he kind of teaches you how to eat like street food and like, you know, pennies to the dollar. So I really enjoy watching a lot of his, you know, that's my escape, man. I like to escape. If I want to escape, I'll watch like a travel show and just be all about the food. So like, yeah, some of my favorite ones are like the Taco Chronicles, like I said, Chef's Table, John Favreau's show that he had with Roy Choi. That one was really fun. What else? Yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that I watch is food. I like food. I live in the Bay Area where there's so much food here, but you still want to be able to expand on that. You know, I live in a small area. I don't live in a small area. I live in an area, and around me on any given weekend, you literally have about 50 or 60 taco trucks like around me with just different people just cooking different styles of Latino food. You know, Guatemalan, Mexican, Salvadorian, just so much around us. So food is a culture that I like to be a part of. It's a culture that I like to think that I'm in with my girlfriend, because anytime, you know, we go out to go out, anytime we go out, we'll go out and look for something new, discover new foods, try something else. So that's another channel that I'm trying to work towards. It's been years in the making, but that's another travel channel that I've been working on the side with my girlfriend, where we go around like reviewing local food and local beer, you know, and it's aimed at people who are coming to the Bay Area, not for people in the Bay Area, but for people who want to visit the Bay Area. Like if you're going to stay in this city, but you can't go to San Francisco, while you're in this city, check out this restaurant, you know? So a lot of food channels, a lot of food variety, a lot of traveling. That's the thing that I also gravitate to.
I wouldn't. I can't watch food channels and that. Me personally, like I I have no self control, so I'd probably just be like, okay, I'm gonna make that. I'm gonna make that. I'm gonna make that, and just like have like a bunch of it sitting in front of me and just eat it all. I'd probably be like 400 pounds just watching it all the time.
And that's what we do. That's pretty funny because that's sometimes that we'll do that. Like I'll find something on so there's this one chef that I watch, and he's got some videos on Facebook. And he'll make like gourmet Chinese dishes like super fast, super quick. I'm like, I can make that. I can do that. What do I need? What are the ingredients that I need for that? And I'm very fortunate enough to live in such an area where I have an Asian market, a Latino market, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern market. Like I literally have ingredients at an arm's length over here. If I want to make Jamaican food, I can go to this spot in downtown real fast and pick up spices and come home and make some, jerk chicken. I am fortunate enough to be able to do that. That's why I like watching the travel channels, because I know I can get some of these ingredients pretty easily. So watching some of the stuff and being like, I can make that. And there are times where my girlfriend's like, okay, all right, I see what you're doing. You did good. Because it's not just watching the channels. It's not just watching somebody else do it and me dreaming about it. It's me saying, can I make that? How easy is that? What do I need right now to be able to put that together? Because there are times when her and I just can't leave the house. We're like, it can't go anywhere. Hey, but we have these ingredients and we can make this dish tonight. Like, heck yeah, let's do it. It gives us that ability to expand our kitchen skills, to be able to have fun with food. And that's why I like watching a lot of those channels, because there are times where I can't go to the restaurant that serves a certain dish out in downtown or in this city or that. Screw it, I'll just make it here. I'll make it on my own. And one of my favorite dishes ever is something called okonomiyaki, which is a Japanese pancake type dish. There was just one day I was like, I want this. Screw it, I'm gonna learn how to make it. I went online, looked for the ingredients, I came home, I made it, and I was happy. I was like, hell yeah. This is why you watch food channels, is to be able to satisfy your need whenever you want it. Boom.
And this is the difference between you and I, though. You're like, I can make that. Like you're saying you can make that, and I'm like, I want to eat that. That's my preference to that. It's not. It's like, oh, I can make that. Let me see if I can do what they're doing. I'd be like, no, I want that in my belly now. That's the difference between you and I.
And there's just a certain satisfaction, as I'm not going to call myself a chef whatsoever, but there's just a certain satisfaction to being able to make that food that you really, really want. And you're like, I don't want to wait for it, or I don't want to go out and buy it. Let me do it myself. And, in the end, it's kind of like you save money because you learn how to cook it, right? And it's cool because you know how to do it and you can do it whenever you want, and yeah, you're eventually going to eat it, Travis. Once you cook it, you're like, guess what? I don't have to share this with anybody. I'm making this for myself. You can make yourself a big bad batch of chicken wings, just have fun with it.
That's awesome. That is great. I'm so glad that we did this, Eman, but it has hit that hour mark, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful day.
Thank you so much for having me, Travis, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks thanks for doing this with me. Man, this was something that was in the making for a very long time, and I'm glad I was able to join.
So I got one last question, but before that, make sure to go follow C List Eman on Instagram, follow him, go sub up to him on YouTube, as well as go sub up to C List Villains podcast on YouTube as well. You can find C List Eman over there as well. Like what you see here, make sure to hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and hit that bell for notifications for every single video. So C List Eman, what comics are, like you said you're big into the indies right now, and you've been reading a lot of trades, which I've been doing the same, but what are some of the indies that don't get a lot of love that you think that should get the spotlight?
Seven Secrets. is one. Tom Taylor. That's one that I don't see a lot of people talking about. It is just a fantastic, action-packed, fun-filled ride. Basilisk right now. I'm not sure if a lot of people are reading it, but I think it's such a good book right now. So, like in my opinion, Seven Secrets, Basilisk, and Noctera are all kind of like along the same lines as far as like storytelling and how hard they hit. So I would recommend those three right there.
Those three right there. Have you been reading any of the Spawn? I know you said you wanted to get into the Spawn, but have you been reading any of the King Spawn or Gunslinger Spawn at all?
I've collected a couple of the issues of King Spawn and Gunslinger. Gunslinger, Gunslinger's funny. That guy needs help. I feel bad for him. King Spawn, I have a couple of those issues, but I missed out on the Scorch, so I need to probably go back and pick those up.
Also, you did mention Transformers. Have you been picking up any of the Transformers comics?
That's the one thing I don't do is collect the Transformers comics. If there's one that I really want to collect, it's going to be the Shattered Glass. That's one I want to go back and read.
Yeah, Flash by Night has told me about that, and it sounds really interesting to hear that kind of like Starscream is like the hero of the story. So I'm interested in that because like it's kind of flipping the script. Oh, there you go.
Yep. And then there's Optimus, who's like an evil Optimus, and I got this one. This is the Shattered Glass Optimus Prime right here. So yeah, it's a world where Autobots are bad and Decepticons are good. I think they're still the same. I think Autobots are still good, but instead it's Megatron's crew that are the Autobots and Optimus Prime is the Decepticons. So that's why it's intrigued me. I like the designs on them, and I'm hoping that I'm not hoping. I really want to go back and read the Shattered Glass storyline.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be either picking them up in single issues or picking it up in trade. That's for
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
So, Eman, thank you so much for joining me. This has been fantastic. I love delving into the Final Fantasy world with you, and I hopefully we can talk a little bit more about Final Fantasy when the second part comes out.
Oh, I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk to someone and nerd out about that one right there, Travis. No problem at all.
All right. Like I said, make sure to go follow C List Eman. Link is down below. Go sub up to him and go sub up to the C List Villains podcast. As always, my friends, station and stay nerdy.